how to move from a conceptual idea to eventually having a book in front of you or having assembled some sort of product about design. And like Elizabeth said early on, we are trying to do a very condensed version of what we went through with each team, and also giving you some information about how the entire process unfolded over the last year. We started, this is pretty exactly a year that we had the idea, and there were some sort of important dates along the way, and we're going to tell you about them. So on the table distributed are a couple of copies of the book that we just received hot from Lulu a couple of days ago. The book is also online. I think that the book will live mostly online. That's the title page.
And it was actually sort of an odd feeling yesterday when we picked up the books. They'd been sent to a friend's office, and suddenly we were looking at them, and it felt too complete, too finished. Something about a printed bound book. It was the first time you'd seen it looking like this, and so, you know, we have it because it's easy for you to hold in your hands, but in the end, I think it's been an interesting process to understand that I think, as we'll discuss more today, that this kind of fast, you know, free-form, unpaid, speculative design project probably isn't best served by the format of a book, because it makes it seem much more polished, much more complete in a way, and we really everything like to feel.
Quick letter from us, then we have 2 essays, and then we have those 11 teams, and at the end of the book there's also some documentation about the Festival of Ideas where we participated, and then some, you know, what things that are in books like acknowledgements and this kind of stuff. The process, like we said before, the process started essentially with us asking people who we thought had, who we knew had a sort of a predominant design preoccupation. Like most of the teams, or I would probably say all of the teams, we knew had invested time and commitment into a specific subject that they're interested about. And so those were the people that we asked, and each of the team came to us, or we met them someplace for a weekend or a day, usually on the weekend, because people have to work during the week, so it was mostly on the weekends. And we just hashed out, we asked people to have picked a station already, and we sort of just brainstormed for a couple of hours about the possibilities that we see at that particular station with the design intent that they brought to the table.
And so, yeah, those meetings lasted, sometimes it was one day, and some people it was 2 afternoons. And really the focus of that, like these conversations, it was Nico and me, and then usually 2 or 3 other designers sitting around a table in our apartment, and sometimes drinking tea, sometimes drinking beer, depending on the crowd, and talking about sort of at the end when they left our apartment, what we wanted for each team was to have done a brainstorming. So they came with a station, and we wanted to brainstorm and then focus in on one idea, kind of what's your one intervention. And then when they left, and then sometimes we did some design with them, but mostly they left and did the design, and then the production of the drawings that you see in the book themselves, sort of offline. So Nico's just quickly flipping through
the entire book. A bunch of the designers are here, so I think we're gonna look at their projects more in detail later on. What kind of happened to us along the way, which we hadn't planned, but we were extremely grateful for, was that we found an opportunity to exhibit at the Festival of Ideas for a New City it was in May, I think, April or May, organized by the New Museum, and we'd assembled these black boards. Here's the drawing of them. And they were kind of leaning, as you can see on this diagram on the right. The back side, so the side that's leaning toward you, had the drawings that are in the book. Well, at the drawings, at the stage they were in May, that are now much more polished in the book, were on the back of these boards, and then on the front we had blackboard paint. So we essentially encouraged all the visitors to the design festival of ideas to write their complaints, wishes, desires onto these blackboards. You see, like in the beginning in the morning, it was all white, all black, and then at the end of the day, they were just filled with comments from all age groups, all kinds of people. We've listed, I think, all of them.
65 comments that we
Yeah.
traced down, and there's just a short excerpt. I pulled out about 10 of them in our essay that I just love. I'll just read them quickly. My favorites, sort of in order from the most practical to the most absurd. So Wi-Fi, maps that show train locations in real time, natural lights and plants, a traveling subway library, poetry in the subway, popcorn stands, hammocks, exclamation point, more hugs, comma, more smiles, aromatherapy infused platforms, train-powered smoothie machines, and my personal favorite, poop at home, not on the sofa. So there was actually a lot of the comments from people passing our booth at the festival were about smell. Smell was like the #1 sense for people. Sound and smell were really strong.
So I think, on a very general level, I think one of the observations that we made in this entire process of going through these 11 design charrettes and then assembling all this stuff together is that it's like today we were talking about what actually changed in these 12 months for us, and I think it remained remarkably close to the initial idea, but the way we think about it, or we thought about this entire thing and what its opportunities really are, has changed dramatically. I mean, this on the one hand escalated in scale beyond our wildest dreams, and the first shocking thing was that we had 11 teams because essentially nobody said no. I mean, we
started asking people.
Everybody said yes, and we were a little bit overwhelmed by the positive response from all the people who wanted to participate in it.
Maybe just quickly, of the designers who participated in SubSeries, can you guys just raise your hand?
So that's Evan. Ruth. Gwen wrote a wonderful essay, and Evan, as I said already.
And Nico and we did a project with them.
Okay, so I think now that we kind of introduced what we did, we'd like to maybe split up in 2 tables.
I was going to say 3, maybe like 3 satellites. Like we can pull this way, this way.
All right, Evan, you take 1 table.
All right.
Bobby, Ruth, you take the 2nd, and we take the 3rd. And then at the end of the day, maybe we have a competition who's got the best design.
Who's better?
I'm just joking.
So just to start by focusing, just listing everything that you observed from the station, ideas, and then working towards coming up with as a table a consensus about what's the focus, what would be a place to make an intervention. And definitely, as Nico hinted before, like each team, they came to the station, they came up with an intervention, but it was really about like smashing an idea together with the station. So, urban agriculture, light, gaps, like some sort of design idea, and then just smashing it into the station and seeing where it fit.
Our class station.
Yeah. And then for people that weren't on the tour, let's push that.
Information in the subway so that it's easier access, whether or not you are a local who uses the train all the time or if you're a tourist. So keeping in mind some of the budget difficulties of the MTA, we went with a lot of low-tech interventions. So very rough, very rough sketch. Just sort of some information center, keeping with the notion that we kept talking about of tying the subway more to the area around it, so that when you're on the subway, you don't feel like you're just leaving. You aren't just leaving the neighborhood. You are actually part of the neighborhood that you are exiting at the train. That there would be this information center that would have the subway map and service updates, but also listings in the neighborhood of cafes or museums or something that you can go to when you actually go above ground, so that the station isn't just a portal away to a portal to or from. It really is part of the neighborhood. So this sort of very organized information center with like a graphical identity, we thought would be one really good thing. That in general ties into better signage. So whether it's something on the ground, so like footsteps on the ground telling you how to get to something when you leave, or which cars you should be, like where the entrance to the cars are, so like where the doors are, just to make things more efficient when you actually get on the train. We like that idea of signage, and also like historical information while you wait, so you're not just bored on the platform. So whether that's information about the actual subway station or about something in the area, just once again tying in your brief experience in the subway station to the idea that you're also above ground. You're not just isolated from the station.
I was going to say tying you also from like outside the station, like vice versa. So you're also
Right.
connected to the station when you're like half a block away, that you're not completely aware that you're half a block away from the subway station. So some kind of marker or information may be there, and also connecting to when the train is coming. So for like the station, we were thinking like the globe could flash or something like that, telling you that it was a couple minutes away.
Or even if, and this is sort of a system-wide thing, but even if the timers were at the top of the staircase. One thing I mentioned I liked about this particular station is that you can actually see the platform before you swipe in, whereas a lot of times you have to swipe in, go down the staircase or go around the corner, and you can only tell if the train is leaving if you see a mass exodus of people, or you can kind of hear it. This is nice in that you can wait in that. You can wait outside of the fare zone, just in that, like after you come down the stairs, but before you swipe in, you can see if there's actually a train there, and you can make up your mind as to whether or not you should swipe your MetroCard or not. But that's not something which is in a general trait about every station. And another good thing about the station we liked was there are two exits. There are two different places you can enter and exit, which helps with flow of traffic. But we thought that the signage could improve that. So whether it's footsteps on the ground or just something explaining where you are going to be when you exit, just tying you back above ground again.
Anything outside, you think? Cool.
Thank you. Who's presenting?
We're really, all of our ideas were just like all of them. So we think that we agree. We really, it's great that you guys actually went in the direction of an actual intervention, because we really had a lot of off the wall ideas, which I think other people may be more equipped to run down, such as Kate.
Yes. We talked a bit about the concept of urban permaculture design. I don't know if you guys are familiar. Urban permaculture design. I don't know if anyone is familiar with permaculture design, but it started in Australia, and it's basically this idea of harnessing the power of systems that are already there. So an example that we thought would be interesting would be to take the grates that are already present on the ground that some people use for heating to kind of warm up, and where water might be flowing out, can we create a water catchment system? What can we do to harness that output and maybe figure out what's an input that could be interesting from the humans below as well? And that led us to the idea of creating almost a step well. I don't know if anyone's familiar with the concept of a step well. They use them in India a lot to harness, light underground. So I think they're doing that below line, actually. We were discussing that. So kind of coming up with that concept. So that's where we diverge a bit, is creating this sort of, city of lost children concept underground. So when the world explodes, we'll be fine.
But the idea about wayfinding was something that we talked a lot about. And someone had come up to Adrian during the tour of the woman and said, "Where's Cat's Deli?" So that's weird thinking was like the catchy title of our project was going to be "Where's Cat's Deli?"
And it really, it echoes a lot of what you guys mentioned in terms of the subway, like introducing an information center, because there's so many blank spaces that we saw in the particular platform that we just were with. It's like the neighborhood guide and there's like the guide arrive that are completely blank because they're relying on individual workers to be able to post and update, and it's completely subjective. So the only listing right now is film form, but what else if we were to automate it and to have it be something that could exist at every particular station? It could be particular to the environment, to like major institutions, to you can type in the directions that or type in a location that you're trying to reach, and because you're on Houston Street, but you don't really know where Cat's Deli is. It can even be something that you don't have to swipe. You don't have to be using that particular station to use.
And I think because so many of us are like the smartphones, we immediately think of using this technology as ways of communicating. Like there is a team that talks about, Yihong and Peter were talking about at Columbus Circle of making these kind of Wi-Fi nodes, which would be physical places on the platform that would be, you could see them and you would understand that they would be curated by topics. So you could understand, you could go stand with your phone under this, and this would be about sports, or this would be about the Museum of Modern Art, what's going on there now, different topics. And as a way of coalescing people around a physical space, so you're standing, you could maybe strike up a conversation or whatever, and then you would then be on the train with the people who are also interested in the Yankees. Whatever.
It's so many ideas. It's hard to like. The idea didn't go.
Yeah, would we
The art thing.
Oh, yeah.
That you can talk about since you just mentioned it.
We have one more.
So I don't know who mentioned it, but just the idea of using the subway as sort of almost an exhibition space, like a rotating exhibition space, almost the stations as destinations to direct you, towards the next piece of art, which is actually down on the platforms.
Like, we're thinking of the whole, because the Houston Street has an art installation of tiles, so like thinking of them as a whole collection, maybe there's some sort of tour, or you can, or maybe on the floor in front of that, there's like go 6 stations here, 4 stations here to see the next piece in the collection.
So curation subway wide almost,
yeah,
line wide.
Like something could be kind of a cheap activity with kids or whatever. Spend a Saturday and go to 6 stations and look at 6 pieces of art or whatever. But like because they're all inside the paid zone.
Right.
So
just within the network. We even had the idea, we didn't mention about it, but instituting some kind of blackboards in certain places along the subway platform where you could write things about service changes, really a low-tech intervention about how to like even provide a place for graffiti that you can wipe off, or some other ideas that we all talked about. So it's another kind of intervention to communication.
okay, what do you got?
Who wants to present? I should start. Okay, so we it's like it's initially the most interest was around these yellow plastic or rubber mats that are we think for the seeing impaired, indicating that if you step any further you're going to fall into into the
The
ditch.
rat world.
And
We were a pretty cranky group back then.
yeah, mostly complaining.
That was me.
So we think that that's a missed opportunity. It's not really giving us a lot of information, and it's uncomfortable for people in high heels. And it would be a very great opportunity to institute some sort of orthopedic foot massage system. You know, that's also for blind people who like follow this path, like. Because it's just on the end of the platform, it doesn't, like there's no way for blind people, or we think there's no way for blind people to really find their way through the station. So this should really, ideally, go through the entire station, from the entrance upstairs all the way down to the platform, and massage your feet at the same time. And that was one idea. So this was a texture thing. As texture and surface thing, and then perhaps even have like these kind of these opportunities to put your feet up while you're sitting down in the train. So this could be a seamless transition from one to the other. Then the next idea was, well, we had some discussion about the use of materials, especially these wooden benches that are in there. They are simultaneously seen as dirty, mostly because of the way they're designed. So there's these sharp corners that collect crap. We don't really want. And bed bugs have parties there. But at the same time, the wood also functions as a kind of you know, when it's very humid, if it were plastic or stainless steel, it would become very sticky and uncomfortable to sit on, and the wood is able to absorb that humidity. So it is theoretically a good material, and it wears nicely. It's been in there for a long time, apparently. But it's just not designed really well. Then we had some talk about both people, what we called the sort of the urban archaeology of the subway station, so that people wear it down. There's a wear and tear on the system at the same time as nature is infiltrating the system, and it makes these kind of lines on the wall where water trickles down, stalactites, stalagmites, and we think there's an opportunity for this to be exploited by designers, so that we see a section of the infrastructure that is happening below while we're in the subway system. We do let nature infiltrate into the system, so that we see some traces. We see there's the idea of never ever renovating the full station, so that people who know the station have a kind of a memory of what was there before. And you know, like a lot of ideas around urban archaeology or urban ecology.
We thought you could leave a section at the end of the platform that wouldn't be renovated each time. And so actually the new part of the station would get smaller and smaller and smaller. And you'd be able to walk back in time through like, oh, this is what Queen looked like in the 1980s.
Yeah.
And this is what, you know. So it was kind of, because we were thinking about sort of we noticed for the first time that there is actually a plaque that says when the station was last renovated and when it was constructed. And we made us realize we were not aware of the life cycle of subway stations. So.
Adrian was saying that even when you go to the transit museum, that they preserve old cars and they run them periodically, like at the holidays.
Yeah.
But that the transit museum has made kind of a policy decision not to preserve the graffiti cars from the 80s. So they're not. So that's an interesting part of history that's just kind of becoming erased and.
Because we're on tape, I don't want to necessarily be accountable for having made that particular statement, but it's sort of inferred. So that's, you know, through whether that's MTA official stance or whether that's Hartford Transit, just from conversations that I've had and workshops and things that I've been a part of, you know, that's just a period that, you know, they just would rather forget.
Yeah.
And for obvious reasons, but, you know, I think in our community of sort of like urban appreciators, design appreciators, art appreciators, like that is such a prominent memory and a prominent sort of like representation of what the city was at a certain time point.
Yeah. Maybe John could just quickly talk about, because you came in a minute late, you could talk maybe about your idea, because you guys, like, he did one of the projects, and they had a really similar station, the 86th Street station on the Upper West Side, the one close to the Central Park West. And
Which part are you running?
can you just quickly, like, one paragraph about what your project was and your ideas about it?
Okay. So,
Wait, I'm trying to get there.
Can you guys
Page
see
36.
that, or do you want me to switch off the light? Yeah, there you go.
so we had a few ideas to sort of synthesize into a strategy of how to look at these stations rather than renovating or changing a station. Looking at it as a collection of pieces designed specifically for the subway, you know, during a certain period of time. So, sort of updating or evolving those pieces of the station rather than changing the entire thing as a whole. So, for example, like you have turnstiles, fences, the walls, and everything like that that have evolved over time. The benches, I think, were introduced in the late 70s or early 80s, something like that. They're all sort of timepieces of what was considered efficient or necessary for its time, some of which are outdated or could be improved. And so each one of us sort of took on one or two things to sort of take a stab at redesigning or evolving. And this one that you're looking at right here is the gates. Trying to just sort of make them a bit more aesthetically pleasing, introduce some sort of design into them. It's one of Peter's contributions. And then looking at, also Peter, looking at the tiles and how the MTA actually has a history of literally just retiling over existing tiles. So a lot of the time when they do a major overhaul of the station, they'll tear back through 3 or 4 layers of tiles, you know, 1.5 feet back into the wall, shrinking the station, like you had mentioned. So his idea was, instead of just completely erasing those tiles and that history of just amalgamating these things on top of each other in ways that resonate with the past. So, you know, introducing glass tiles and things like that that allow you to see back into previous iterations of the walls. So here's some different pattern configurations that could make the walls a bit more interesting with that idea in mind. And so this was an idea both of improving and making the lighting a bit more interesting and providing a bit more information for people standing on the platform, as well as cleaning the subway systems. It's a big problem with steel dust in the subways. As the trains come in and they break on the lines, they just pulverize steel dust, and it's the reason why electronics are not pervasive in the subway. And if you see something with electronics, it's housed in some doomsday box, because they have to keep every ounce of steel dust out. So this was an idea of trying to collect and, you know, amalgamate that steel dust on the ceiling in these magnets and create sort of stalactites of steel hanging from the ceiling that could be cleaned easier and might be visually interesting. But the lighting system itself would also provide information on which cars are, you know, emptiest, so that as people are waiting for a train to arrive, they can sort of queue up along the platform in places where they're most likely to get a seat or where there's the most standing room available. So So that's, I think that's the last page, but that should be it.
So it's 5, that's what I was here just bring about. It's 5 o'clock, which is sort of the end of our full time together. You know, we just wanted to sort of say in closing, I mean, we're going for a drink down the street. Everyone's invited if you want to come keep talking. But we just sort of in closing, Nico and I, and kind of having the idea for this project a year ago and getting many of you involved, like one of the most important parts for us was these conversations that we've had periodically, whether it be with, you know, the first conversation we had outside of the two of us was in this room actually almost a year ago with Justin Fowler, who works with C-Lab, and what we found is that talking through the project helped evolve the project. And so the project itself hasn't really changed. Like we said before, the project hasn't changed, but the way we think about the project has changed. And so, you know, we want to thank you for coming. This conversation has been really valuable for us. And, you know, moving forward, we, like I said at the beginning, like showing this as a book, I think, is inaccurate because it's not finished or done. Like, there should be more pages stuck in behind, because we think of this project, you know, and this as a prototype of a project we would like to do again in other contexts. Thinking about maybe taking it to other Studio X's. We've been invited to take it to Rio and to Mumbai and use local designers there. Potentially coming up with another idea in New York to think about a different condition. And, you know, I mean, what was most valuable for this, I think, was picking one specific program that then had a lot of iterations. So kind of really focusing at the beginning, it was just public space subway stations, and then saying that's the only rule. Anything else you can do, and saying yes to all of the other ideas. So, I mean, Nico and I will be around for questions, more discussion. The book is completely available, full copy online at subseries.org/book. Or if you just go to subseries.org, the blog about this project, you can find the link. And it's also available, like printed on Lulu. You can order a copy. And just, you know, stay in touch if you guys want to talk more about these kind of nonsensical projects about the future of our cities. So,
Thank you guys.